Hello, Rebecca.
Hey, Marion.
Check it out. We are back for season 2 of the Love and Leary podcast. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it, but I hope that everybody had a great summer and you guys are ready for us to dive in and talk about real issues again for season 2. I can't believe it's happening, and here we are.
Yeah, and we should thank the Nursing Beat because the Nursing Beat is the exclusive media partner of the Love and Leary podcast. So, big shout out to them for continuing to support us being able to support our community of nurses.
We love
So
them
you can
and love that nurses are leading media at this point in time. As we know, this is probably one of the most central and important issues to nursing, changing the narrative around our profession on a national basis. So really glad to be part of the Nursing Beat and the work that they're doing.
For sure. And so, Rebecca, do you want to tell us what we're talking about today on episode 1?
Yeah, we're not starting off on a light topic. As many of you know, we just experienced one again of a massive school shooting in Georgia, and we felt, Marion and I, that it was important to talk about school shootings. And today we're excited to actually bring on one of the leading nurses in the United States, if not the world, who has studied school violence, school gun violence, and the impact that it has on our society, but more importantly, the role that we as nurses can have on changing this. So today we're talking about the subject of stopping school gun violence and dealing with smarter gun laws and the works that we can do as nurses to change that.
Yeah, and I'm going to bring on now my friend and colleague, Robin Cogan. Robin is a nationally certified school nurse.
So we saw her, Marion. Here she comes again. Here we have her. This is what's always so fun when you come back from summer break.
Sorry, y'all. Whew. All right. So my friend and colleague, Robin Cogan, who's a nationally certified school nurse in the Camden City School District in New Jersey, and is the New Jersey director for the National Association of School Nurses, representing the New Jersey State Nurses Association. Robin is an outspoken advocate for safer schools and passionate about making gun violence a vital public health issue. Robin, really glad to have you as a leading voice, a leading nurse in this country, speaking out against gun violence.
Well, thank you. First of all, you two are two of my favorite nurses in this whole country. So, and I admire the work that you do. I feel like we've been on this long journey together through COVID, through so many issues. And I just appreciate your friendship, and I'm honored to be on your podcast. Love the name. And I'm happy to be here. I wish this was not the topic that we needed to discuss, though. I just to start off, if you don't mind, I just want to give a few gun facts that I hope make everybody who listens to this podcast act. And I don't want to get caught up in the minutia of the data, but data is important. And behind every data point, I just want people to remember there are families, there are loved ones, there are individuals, there are communities that are impacted. And so just very quickly, gun violence is now the #1 cause of death of all children and teens in the United States. That alone should be a headline on every paper every single day. The fact that we've allowed it to get this far without taking meaningful action is something that wakes me up at night, truthfully. The other few data points I wanted to share is that there are more guns than people in the United States by almost 100 million. There are a little more than 300 million people in the United States, and there are about 400 million guns. And 800,000 guns were purchased just since COVID. Of those guns, only 40% of them are actually stored safely. And 2/3 of all gun owners have not received formal gun safety training. And because of that, almost 5 million children live in homes with unlocked and loaded guns. And that's 1 out of 3 homes with kids have guns. And through that, 45% of all unintentional shooting deaths of children under 17 are because, first of all, they occur outside of their own homes because they are going to homes where guns are are unlocked and loaded. And so if we can just take those few facts and encourage people to take action, because this impacts all of us.
Well,
I had
and
no idea about those statistics. Thank you for sharing them. I had general knowledge, but that idea that this is the number one killer of kids and teens is something that, to your point, should be on national headlines. And Marion, please jump in.
no, I was going to say, and so when we're specifically thinking about school shootings too, like in this country in the last decade, mass shootings and school violence has significantly increased. And even this year, it looks like it's on pace to be
The worst.
significantly high. And I think it was as of September 6th, there's been 46 school shootings already. Like, what do we do, Robin? How, as nurses, can we help to curb those numbers to keep our kids safe?
It's a great question. It's an important question. And I think it's one that we have to have in the context of people have the right to own guns. They do.
They do.
I have the right. But how do we live safely among 400 million guns? We're not living safely among them.
Right.
Of those school shootings, and there's a wonderful website that I really recommend people looking at. Believe it or not, we need to have a website called the K-12 School Shooting Database, because we need a K-12 school shooting database. And in this database, curated by David Reidman, who is a data scientist, he actually counts every single time a gun is shot on a school campus, whether or not it's morning, night, weekend, or during school. And that's because every time a gun is shot at school, you are breaking the sanctity of that building. You are piercing the safety of the people that live around that building, that enter that building every day. So the work that he's done is just phenomenal. And his numbers are much higher because he does count every single time a bullet is shot. This is not something that is nationally tracked. There is no national database. So we're pulling databases. He's pulling information from newscasts. He has like 300 Google alerts that he gets every day. We are not doing things on a national basis to address this, right? To even track it. I mean, for many years, even researching gun violence, there was no funds allocated for it because of something called the Dickey Amendment. Are you familiar with the Dickey Amendment?
No, please.
So it was named for a congressman from, I believe he was from West Virginia. And it became part of, it was like an add-on to a bill that it was one of these, I guess they were shutting down the government or something, was added on very at the last minute. The essence of the bill is that no federal funds could be allocated by places like the CDC and NIH for any gun violence research that could potentially impact the purchase of guns. And so it became a general kind of sense that there's no more gun violence research. And for 20 years, there was very little to no gun violence research that was supported by the federal government. That Dickey Amendment was reversed a few years ago. And since then, very slowly, but still, they have released, I think at this point, it's at least 25 million, if not more, from CDC and NIH for gun violence prevention research. But that's relatively new. And we lost a lot of time in those 20 years and a lot of lives in those 20 years.
It's crazy, right? Like, America's gun homicide rate is more than 25 times the average of other high-income countries. Mass shootings have gone up in decades. Right, our peer countries. Mm-hmm. And yet the research we need to figure out what's going on hasn't been happening.
Now there is some funding, but it doesn't meet the level of the need of the impact of for something that's the number one cause of deaths of all children. It used to be motor vehicle accidents, right? Now it's guns, the number one cause of death of children and teens. And I have to say that children and teens in brown and Black communities, it's been the number one cause. They have much more impacted. There's a racial and ethnic difference in gun deaths among kids. It's incredibly stark. I'll just give you an example. In 2021, 46% of all gun deaths among children and teens involve Black victims, even though the Black population in that time, under 18, only 14% of the U.S. Under 18 population that year was Black. But 46% of all gun deaths involved children and teens who were Black. So, Black children and teens were roughly 5 times as likely as their white counterparts to die from gunfire in 2021. 32% compared to Hispanic, and Asian, only 1% of victims. But it shouldn't be any victims. We're talking about our kids, right?
So as a school nurse, like, do students talk to you about their fears around gun violence? Like, how do you talk to students about gun violence? Like, what is it like in the schools?
Yeah, not only do not only do I talk to students about gun violence, I've encouraged students to express themselves through art. I give out free gun locks in my schools. We can do all these things. I think the strongest thing that all of us could do as nurses and all of us could do as healthcare professionals is begin to have conversations with our family, with our friends, and then keep that concentric circle moving out about safe storage. Safe storage saves lives. Because when you look at the full complexity of gun violence in the totality, almost 45,000 people every year die from gun violence. More than 50%, closer to 60% of all those deaths are suicide. So if we could decrease the number of suicide, and most of that suicide is because people have, they have this thought of hopelessness, right? That's fleeting. We know that those thoughts can pass. But what happens is people have these awful thoughts of hopelessness, and they also have immediate access to an unlocked and loaded weapon. The same thing goes with, we have not learned, not only have we not learned how to resolve problems, we go right to violence. Why is our society so violent? It's as if road rage has come out from behind the car with a gun.
Yep.
And that's the community, that's the world that we have created because we haven't taken action. So the simple actions like, using those public health principles, just like we did with seatbelts, just like we did with speed limits, those things save lives. But we need to know what the evidence-based research shows. And we haven't had the decades of research. It was taken away from us. So first we need to know exactly what the problem is, and then we can apply the public health approach.
It's really interesting what you say, because obviously it's a societal problem that you're saying on much larger levels, right? We have issues of people with mental health. We have racial and ethnic disparities. We have economic disparities that are going into this. And I have to tell you, though, I think that what's perplexing to me is you talked a lot about it. Every time that a bullet is fired near school, it pierces the veil of the security that we all felt. When I remember going to school, the natural feeling was, I'm safe here. I'm here to study. This is an environment that actually encourages me to become a better human being. And what I'm watching with my own kids going to school nowadays is they are constantly doing drills that put them in places that they feel unsafe, that they are more, used to gun violence and drills than they are in performing CPR on individuals. And this last incident, which I think is just growing for all of us because of the increase in frequency, the increase that it seems to be happening over the course of the last year, and this repeated, response, which is thoughts and prayers and no action, is to the point for me that is at a point where it feels like we need to stop the insanity. And so you have been a long-term expert in this. And so for people and nurses and mothers, you just listed a very big one, a very big policy issue that had blocked the ability for us to study this problem. Now we're getting around it. But, what other things do we as an American public need to be aware of that is preventing change from happening? And is there other means besides an act of Congress that could be taken either at the state level or the local level that can provide more security? Or in your situation, somebody with a mental health crisis cannot get access to a gun. What things can we take action at perhaps perhaps not that federal level, but could take some action to make our communities in which we live feel like they're doing something until we can get Congress to act?
Right. No, those are really, really excellent questions. And I have to tell you, if every healthcare professional out there became a champion around safe storage, what we have to do is change our culture from a gun culture to a gun safe culture. I think that would be a huge, huge sea change. Just like every time we get in our car, we put on a seatbelt. It's not even a thought anymore. But if
Yep.
you were born like I was prior to seatbelts, it was a huge deal when seatbelts first came out, right? It's the same thing around safe storage and gun safety. Yes, people have a right to own guns, but they also have a responsibility to keep those guns safe around other people. And that's what's not happening. And most people who own guns don't own just one gun. They own an arsenal of guns. So there was a really kind of disturbing recent study that was just released from Rutgers that showed that parents who taught their children about safe storage and gun safety actually are not necessarily safe storage. Parents who taught their children about gun safety actually did not feel the need as much to lock up those same guns because they believed that their child knew how to handle it. But that's actually not really true. And
And what
so
are the studies saying about these kids that are taking these actions, out of curiosity, Robin? These students that have taken this, is there any kind of research that's gone on to sort of quantify behaviors before or after, or thought patterns, or certain things like that as to why the response has been into taking, doing mass shootings in their schools? Has there been any other underlying understanding?
Some of the studies of the actual school shootings, and this will really be a very upsetting data point for you. I do want to say that you are not alone, Rebecca, in being worried about your kids. More than 45% of parents right now, from a Pew Research study, are concerned that their children are going to get shot at school.
We were just talking about, before you came on, like the number of times my daughter texted me that they were in lockdown because of gun violence or guns around or near her school.
Exactly.
Rebecca was saying the same thing. Yeah, it's as a parent, how can you not think about it every single day your kid is in school?
Exactly. But your question is a really good one. What can we do? There's so many things that we can do immediately that would make a difference. And safe storage really is one of the answers. Not just safe storage of our own guns if we happen to have them, but also asking our family and friends, just like we ask about just like we ask about food allergies, or we ask, do you have is there an aggressive pet in your house? Is there a gun in the house that my child's about to go to that that is not locked, that is out available for children? I mean, does your child know where that gun is? Asking those questions about safe storage will immediately save lives. The other things that we can do is really be very vocal about this issue in our communities. Join things like Moms Demand Action. Be part of making a difference in your own community about safety, because we know that gun violence has invaded all aspects of our life. It's gone, there's been shootings at movie theaters, churches, libraries, supermarkets. I mean, the 4th of July parade. I could just go on and on and on. And one of the gripping data points about school shootings that is just, we all have to understand this, is that almost 70% of school shootings happen because of a dispute. It's an escalation of a dispute. So what is happening that our kids cannot resolve issues? What is happening that we can't have conversations that do not become violent? Why have we reached this place in society?
No, it's a good question, and I'm sort of, and to be very honest, it feels there's a philosophical exercise here that I think is important, and I'm going to be very honest. It just feels to me that we know that there's a brokenness in many, I mean, post-COVID, pre-COVID, it seems that, to your point in your question earlier, why is the first action towards violence? And access to guns, if you could lock them up, would make a better one. And I think, though, there are some things that have really perplexed me all the times about background checks and better questions. And then there was my understanding, and maybe you remember this, Marion, there was some kind of proponent of a period of a time check for individuals, right? Of buying a gun, that you couldn't get it the same day that you were looking to purchase it. And some states have implemented a 72-hour or 1 week period of time. And now these things to me seem to make some sense from things like this, smarter gun laws around those ones. And I wish that the resources, you're on the front lines of school nursing, had the dollars to support the mental health infrastructure that clearly this generation is in need of, right? That all of us probably are in need of in some side, because to your point, the way that we're taking out our emotions is through a reaction that is causing mass destruction of other human lives. And there has to be a better way in teaching of these things. So, Marion, what are your thoughts with regards to, I know that, you've been doing a lot of research on this in preparation for this call as well, but what were some of the things that you've been thinking about as we were thinking about talking to Robin here?
Well, I mean, I think, I was reading, there's a student journalist, I don't know if you read this, Robin, who wrote an op-ed a day or two after the
I pushed that out. He's amazing. Yeah.
Right. I read it off of your Relentless school nurse blog. Yeah. I got chills reading it, and I think this is something that you said. He and the 50 million students who attend schools deserve an answer on why. His op-ed was entitled, "Can We Be Safe?" And, he, from his op-ed, has lost all hope that anyone in any sort of leadership or position of power is going to do anything to stop school shootings and to keep children safe. And what a terrible position to be in as a student, to not only feel unsafe going to school, but then not be able to trust or depend on the adults in your life to keep you safe and to do anything to help keep you safe. It's a really sad state of affairs right now.
Yeah, I mean, he felt very much alone. And again, the response is always, this is not the time to talk about it. This is only the time to give thoughts and prayers. But there is good news. I don't want to end this conversation without some hope. And the hope is what we do. We are public health professionals. There is hope in public health for solving this just deadly and ongoing problem. And the Surgeon General finally released an advisory. Now, it's not a full report because that will come hopefully with time. But the Surgeon General has gotten behind the message that gun violence is a public health crisis in America. And because of that, there will be additional funding. While we have missed quite a few years, we can't look back. We have to look forward because the problem continues to grow. I have to say, overall, gun violence has decreased in the last few years. What hasn't decreased are school shootings. They have escalated. The other piece of school shootings that I really want to talk about as well, and then I'll give you some good news on the public health piece. But the other piece of school shootings that I think we must discuss is that the other thing that's escalated in school shootings is where these things are happening. Most school shootings, the largest percentage of school shootings, do not happen in the building. They happen outside of the building. They happen in the parking lot. They happen behind the school. About 30%, maybe it's 32%, happen in classrooms. But what do? We only, for the most part, drill for what would happen in a classroom when that's not the reality. So we're not even looking. First of all, active shooter drills, show me the evidence that they're effective. I have yet to find evidence that they're actually effective. They can be traumatizing. They can cause a lot of harm. They can actually physically injure people. Sometimes they use hyper-realistic sounds, equipment, fake blood to really scare people. That's not helpful. The other increase in school shootings has been around school events like graduation, football games, sporting events where large crowds of people gather. That's really, really scary. But on the public health piece, now that the big point that I want to make is that firearm violence prevention is dependent on a foundation of research. And we have not had that strong foundation of research. We are in the infancy almost stage of gathering our data now that there's finally funding released again. So once we have, the critical research, once we have improved data sources and data collection, then we can inform activities that are based in evidence and not just guess. Did you know that the school safety industry is a $3 billion with a B unregulated industry? And I can only equate it to what happened during COVID. Major dollars were totally thrown away on the most ridiculous things that would have never worked, but there was not time to sit and think about, let's do some research and find out, does it make any sense to put plexiglass over everywhere when actually this is an airborne disease that crosses over the barrier that you're trying to put up? It's the same thing with gun violence prevention. Why are we hardening schools and making them scarier and more sanitized and more prison-like when what we really need is for kids to feel like they belong, to feel connected, to feel like they are part of a community? This is not an either or. This is an everything all at once answer. We need to look at the school community. We need to look at what is happening within the culture and the climate of schools. Yeah.
So, Robin, I want to start to wrap us up, but I want you to talk about the Brady United Against Gun Violence Advisory Council, because I hear you're the only nurse on it. Is that true?
I am. And can I just say, first of all, I'm so honored to be tapped to be in this inaugural advisory council that they have put together. I'm super honored. And I have to say, if it was not for the power of social media, I would not have met these incredible people who brought me on board. So this advisory council is really, like, one of our first goals was to get the Surgeon General to write an advisory, a report on violence prevention. So yay, one of our big objectives has already been met. So we have 5 main objectives. One is to substantially increase firearm violence prevention funding over the next 5 years. And then develop a strategic plan to commission a consensus study through the National Academy of Medicine on firearm violence prevention. These are all public health. This is a public health lens to solve a public health crisis. Advocacy training for healthcare professionals, teaching people how to have those conversations around safe storage, and then amplify the expertise of healthcare professionals, especially those affected by firearm violence. Get us in the press and the media. And Brady's doing this very cool thing where we are now partnering with it's called Brady Show Gun Safety. So they're partnering these efforts in TV and film. So that, just remember way back, probably before you were born, when they started changing how they would show alcohol and tobacco in movies. Mm-hmm. Yes. We're doing the same thing with guns. So now you'll see there's some shows that are coming out. So when the detective comes home from work, what's he doing? He's taking his loaded gun out of the holster, unloading it, separating the ammunition from the gun itself, and locking them in separate cabinets.
It's incredible. That is going to make such a huge difference.
It's going to make a huge difference.
Huge difference.
So I'm super stoked to be part of this amazing panel. And, certainly as a nurse, but especially as a school nurse on the front lines of this, I am beyond honored and excited to add that perspective.
They're so lucky to have you. We're so lucky to have you.
Aw.
And Robin, this has been your life's work. We know that you have been fighting this for a very long time. If you all haven't had a chance to look up Robin's history and background, this ties personally and deeply into her history, and it has been going on, and she's hopefully changing it for the future generations. And so this to me is when nurses take action, are the ones who start to drive voices and national narratives that possibly can influence a better future. And so although this was a dark and disturbing topic, it leaves me, just like you, awake at night without sometimes feelings of hope. It's conversations like these that remind me that even in all the darkness, there's always light of people who are fighting to make those changes, and we're going to grow this flame further. So thank you for being with us, Robin. And Marion, thoughts? Robin, final thoughts?
Well,
No,
go ahead, Marion.
No, I was going to say thank you for the work that you're doing, and all of our children around the world are going to be safer because of it, and we couldn't be more grateful for that.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. And you're two of my favorite national nurse leaders who are, I learned the definition of innovation from Marion, and it was you, Rebecca, that invited me to give my first pitch. So and it was about gun violence. It was about safe storage. It was about safe storage. So
I still remember that. 2019, and we all came together, and that's when it always clicked for me. When nurses innovate, the world will change if only we take them forward, and that's what you do.
Yeah, maybe next we'll get a nurse in the White House. How about that?
I'll be happy to start with a woman in the White House, so we'll start there.
Right? Exactly.
Well, thank you both so much.
Thank you.